Hello everybody, welcome to Crafty Soup. My name is Misty and today I have a layout process video for you using my Counterfeit Kit and a big design process on my Cricut, and we'll get to that in a moment. But let's start with the base of the layout. I am using my Counterfeit Kit and I'm going to use that alphabet set for my title. I'm just pulling out a few pieces from this kit because really it's going to be about that Cricut design element that I'm going to do. So this is my kitty. He's got cancer and he's probably not going to make it very much longer. So I've been doing a lot of stories about him and our life together. And today I wanted to capture all the little moments that I've talked to him. And so I'm picking up on some of that, that human to pet interaction that so many of us have, and we don't necessarily think about it very often. But this has been a big part of our story, and I'm realizing it more and more as he's getting closer to leaving us. And so I wanted to make sure I caught this. So you will notice my title says Feline Chat. And I played around with some border elements around that photo, and in the end I stuck with just a little strip of some color and then this little tiny washi tape. It's hard to tell, but it's blue with some clouds on there, and that gave it just enough of a pop of a border. Now here is that design element I am talking about, all of these speech bubbles. That is how I'm going to keep track of all the little sayings that I've said to this cat over the years. And now I couldn't capture them all, but I've captured the ones that for sure I've said the most. So I used my Cricut to do a test run first. And I did it in the gold drawing pen, and that was not working. So I tried decorating it myself with a gold pen, and that didn't work. I tried some other gold pens. And in the end, I decided that what's going to work the best is to just ink the edges of all of these pieces with some gold and just use that black pen. And we'll talk a little bit more about how that works in the Cricut. So while I'm waiting for all of that stuff to cut on my Cricut, I'm going to take a test run of my journaling. Now I like to do these test runs just to make sure I've got everything right before I put it on my final scrapbooking paper, because I have ruined many, many sheets of scrapbooking paper over the years, and I've learned my lesson. Do test runs first. So I've got that journaling printed. I've checked for typos, and I'm going to run that through my printer using a scrap piece of that cardstock that I'm using to print all my speech bubbles on, but that is currently in the Cricut. So as I'm waiting for that to cut, I am sorting through my embellishments from my kit and picking a few pieces. So here is that cut out of my Cricut. And what I'm going to do is peel off that backing paper and just cut apart a piece that will fit over my journaling. And I'm going to use some temporary adhesive, lots of temporary adhesive, and just cover it right up over my printer paper. And then I'm going to go ahead and run it right back through my printer. Make sure you load your printer paper the correct direction, right side up, upside down, whichever way your printer prints, so that it will print on top of your cardstock. And now you have a custom piece that you can add to your project. Once my piece is good to go, I trim it down to the right size, and then I will peel it off of that backer paper. If you trim all that paper so that you don't see it, you don't have to peel it off. But I wanted to just show you for the video how that looks. And I put permanent adhesive, and then I glue it down, and I start inking up the edges of my speech bubbles, and then I realized I forgot to ink up my journaling. So luckily that permanent adhesive hadn't set quite yet, and I was able to peel it back up. So let's go ahead and move on to how I created all those speech bubbles and how I used my Cricut to help me design. Since this is the heart of this layout, I am going to go over these steps. So I have that blue square, which is created as a 12 by 12 square in my Cricut design. And that black strip represents my photo as a 4 by 12 inch block. And those are grouped together so that I can move them around as a unit. And you can see that I've already created all my little speech bubbles, and I've got those grouped together as a unit also, so that it's easy for me to adjust and resize and such. So I'm going to copy and paste that whole group of speech bubbles, and I'm going to shut everything else off so we can get that out of the way, and I can show you what I did to create all these speech bubbles. If you don't know about grouping and layers in Cricut, that's an important concept that's going to be used throughout this kind of tutorial. So I will try to get to explaining those as we go. So I have that group, and I'm going to go ahead and ungroup everything, and that's up here in the corner. And then once you have things ungrouped, I zoomed in a little bit so you can see better. Each of those blocks now works as its own. So each of those blocks is a text block, which you just do right in Cricut, and an SVG cut file, which I imported into Cricut. And I do have a video on how to import if you don't know how to do that. I created this SVG cut file speech bubbles, and those will be available to you later. But for now, let's just look at what I did with them. So you can see that little attach keyword down at the bottom. Attach is different than group. Group lets you move them around together, but when you go to cut them on the Cricut, attach will keep them attached together as one element. Now my text element, you just saw me go up to that drop-down menu to make sure it's shown as a drawn element, not as a cut element. Now here I'm showing you that sometimes if you have your layers in the wrong order, you won't be able to see it correctly. So you might need to use that arrange button up there to tell those layers to move forward or backwards. And think about just having a stack of paper on your desk. And if you want to move one of those papers to the top where you can see it, then you'll have to arrange it that way. So now I've copied and pasted these text blocks. The one on the left, I'm going to hit the attach button. And so now those two pieces are attached. When I send it to be cut by the Cricut, and you do that by hitting the Make It button, I do have a big file, so it did take a little while to load, but here you'll notice one of my text blocks is on its own cutting mat, and it says it's a pen drawing, but it is not attached to that speech bubble. So Cricut separates those pieces out. So I'm going to cancel that. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to select both of those pieces. If you drag over, it selects anything it touches, and then I'm going to hit that attach button. And then when I go to make it, after it loads, you will now see that it is indeed connected together as a single unit. And then when I'm looking at my cutting mat here, I can rearrange these pieces to cut wherever I want them to on the mat, and that's how I got them to cut in different color zones of that watercolor paper. So that explains all the steps and why my watercolor paper was kind of spread out with all of those different speech bubbles, because I wanted to get those different color zones cut. So that is the basis of attaching for a drawn and cut element on your Cricut. Now here I'm showing you, before you do that attach step, you can flip these speech bubbles around to have them aligned any direction you want them to be. And so when I was working with filling in my speech bubbles, I did flip them and move them around so that they would kind of tuck and squish in better together. I didn't need to rotate any of them, but you can do that as well if you want to. So I hope that helped you see my process of how I use the Cricut to help me design a layout that gives me a visual cue about how big things actually are and how much space they will take up on my finished project. All right, now I've got all my speech bubbles cut out of the final paper. I've inked all the edges. I've arranged them while looking at my screen so I can put them back in the same spots that I designed them at. And then I'm going to attach them down. Now, some of them I'm just attaching straight down, but some of them I'm going to pop up with some foam tape. And the reason I'm doing that is because I have a little bit more story that I want to put behind each of those ones that I'm popping up. And I kind of have them grouped by color. So all the pink ones up in that upper corner are things that kind of go together story-wise. And so I'm only popping up one of those elements and then tucking that little tag underneath there. And you can see I use the foam as a stopper so that it will slide in and out, but it'll stop where that foam runs into the tag. And that's going to be a little hidden journaling for extra story added to this layout. Now you can see I have 4 final pieces that I'm adding that extra journaling to for those kind of 4 different ways of talking to my cat. One of the ways is about food and dinner time. One of the ways is just saying hello. Another of the ways is just kind of how he likes to lay with his belly exposed, but he doesn't really like his belly rubbed. So I've got more little parts of the story like that I'm putting behind. And because I added some of those banners, I'm going to add a few more in some empty spaces just for continuity and consistency and to kind of fill up those empty spaces. And I'm adding a few of these little enamel dots wherever I've got those banners. I'm using a matching color enamel dot to help know how to slide those banners in and out, which side, where, and so that's a clue to putting them away after someone has read them. And then I put this little asterisk note down there and added an asterisk to each banner to say that that's hidden journaling, because otherwise it just looks like a design element. And that little asterisk will let people know that they can interact with those elements. So that's it for today. And before we check out some final photos of this project, here is my other kitty who bombed my video. I hope you enjoyed this project. I hope you got some tips on using your Cricut to design your layouts and help you space and size things visually so that you know what you're going to need to do when you're ready to put everything together. If you found something helpful, please do give my channel a like, because that does help my channel grow. And I will be back on Friday with another process video using my Counterfeit Kit. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.